What have you kind of changed the most over time, would you say, that's made the biggest difference since you've started doing it to now?
There's probably a couple of things that initially we were quite focused on the competitive side of things, but
Yeah.
through the time we've also added more experiential elements. So and would be on top of the big prize categories. There's also just these random daily challenges that get dropped that anybody can go for, with sort of like mini prizes of merch or extra drinks at the party at the end and stuff like that.
Okay.
And that way, even if you're one of the people that's just having fun, you can still win something. And they're actually in a better advantage to do that because they're not going to be stuck on a train all the time.
Yeah.
That's one end of it. And then the other end of it is that over time we've built out all of our own technology that underpin the events. So originally we were using like tracking apps that cater to marathons, or GPS devices that cater to orienteering. And none of these solutions really worked for what we were doing. So over time we've invested, built our own tracking app, online maps, dot watching basically. But within using our own technology, we've been able to like optimize the experience. So they have a lot access to, instead of just split times, which you have from a marathon, there's
Yeah.
stuff like how did that person get their points? What checkpoints have they been to? And it just manages the experience a lot better. And we just keep building on that over time. So we're adding like increasingly more sort of game mechanics within our challenges, which
Okay.
wouldn't be realistic to manage by hand, as it were. So as we continue to develop our tech, we can make the game more interesting. And that's been a really big bit of feedback as well.
Does that allow you then to kind of focus on, like you said, the more important bit that you're finding is captivating people the most then?
Yeah, so there's one part of it. So we're in, as that data's in house, we can analyze it, and I was saying about our modeling for how difficult events are. We use it for that. But it's also things, so let's say an orienteering challenge, like you were saying in hiking. Our basic version initially, these checkpoints have points, and as people come in at the end, we can tally up how many points they've got. And that's sort of a realistic level of admin. But now, because we've built our own app and everything, we've been able to build in mechanics like the first person to reach a checkpoint gets a bonus.
Yeah,
But
I
all,
saw that on one of your videos recently. Someone went to one and they were the first ones there to feed an animal or something to that effect, and they had to take a picture feeding an animal, and then they got the bonus point for whatever one that was. That looked quite good.
yeah, so it's stuff like that. That a game mechanic like that, it's all managed by the technology. So they check in. It Most of the bonuses is technically anybody within the first like 15 minutes or the first hour. So then the system manages all of that, and that way we don't have an insane amount of administration to try and manage some of these challenges where there's up to 200 people. So yeah, by having our own tech, I mean, we're looking at lots of other stuff. We've got an event in Japan in a couple of weeks, and there's some of the checkpoints are sort of, they've got a clue to where they are, but it's not just on a map. But when they get there, the app activates and goes, "Oh, you're within the checkpoint," and it allows them to check in and grants them their points and everything. So they get that confirmation, and then but just various other things we can add over time to make the experience like richer with more stuff going on for the people that. Some people just want a really simple adventure. Some people really want to get their teeth into as many game mechanics as possible. So yeah, the tech is what's allowing us to do that.
When you were starting this early on, is there anything that definitely just didn't work within what you did? And if you were going to go back in time, that you just definitely wouldn't do again when you were starting up this event?
That's a really good question, actually. One route we went down was trying to staff our checkpoints,
Okay.
um, which, because I come from like a cycling sportive background and as like a hobby and like running events, and you look at the ultra marathons and stuff like that, the checkpoints or feed stops are all
Yeah.
star. So I think initially came from that model, but where these falls apart on these events is the checkpoints span an entire continent, and they need to be staffed, 24/7 for like, 3, 4, 5 days. And for the people doing the event, and that was costing an absolute huge amount of money and causing to have to like drive up entry fees. And if you think about the experience of the competitor, they just come up, say hello to this person, get marked off on a system, and then have their time logged, have a little chat, and then walk off. And so the value for money that people were getting back on what they as their entry fee didn't make sense at that point. Whereas, in a
No.
feed stop in a sportive, at that pit stop, there's snacks from sponsors. There might be Portaloos and things like that that are more directly beneficial to the experience. So we ended up skewing that strategy and replacing it with our technology. And then the revenue we saved on staffing checkpoints we used to make our start line event and our finish line awards party to a much higher production standard. And little details like upgrading the spec of the medals we order from you. That's where we got the revenue from that. And we found, well, it's better for people to have a much nicer medal than all of these checkpoints where they're not really getting any benefit from them. So yeah, that was the big mistake we made with them, I think, at one point.
When we're talking about suppliers for your events, I don't know how many suppliers you have for the different bits and pieces. Obviously, you have things like travel partners, you've got us with the medals, and then you've got people, you've got your data in house. How are you choosing the suppliers who do kind of service your events? What matters when you're picking the suppliers?
So we don't have a huge amount of suppliers in the traditional sense. We have partners slash sponsors on some of the events. So we have long-standing relationships with Jack Flight Club. And what they do is they help us kind of staff the events. And we have just said we've removed all the checkpoint staffing, but on some of the events, they host a party that's about halfway through the event for the people just having fun. And then we have, as you say, like transport partners. So Flixbus, the coach company, gives everybody a discount who's doing the race. We're working to build a relationship with a hotel chain at the moment. It's increasingly stuff like we try and work with tourism boards to kind of up the production level of the events. So we're working with Visit Ljubljana in Slovenia to try and elevate things. Yeah, seriously, yourselves for the medals. We have like merch providers for our t-shirts and stuff. The logic with that was we got this global customer base, and we're quite a small business, so we were looking at like remote fulfillment.
Yeah,
That was the driving decision there. We have some of our event tickets being resold through an online ticketing platform. So imagine a lot of people
yeah,
you work with use EventTrack. They've been really
yeah.
good. So we use them, their payment plan thing in particular, because of the nature of our events, the entry fees, they're everything from about £30 for some events, but up to 300.
Okay.
So the payment plan functionality there is really, really useful, which I mean, larger sporting events like Ironman offer stuff like that, where they have like £500-600 entry fees.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's a few different reasons. And as a byproduct of our events has been about promoting um like sustainable travel.
yeah.
So it's quite an extreme event. Like people are taking a lot of trains and buses, but it is all over land. And we've had feedback from people that online saying, well, they don't think they ever want to do one of our events, but it's inspired them to do an interrailing holiday. And that's one of the reasons we found yourselves and we initially entertained Wooden Medals was because of the slightly lower environmental impact. And our t-shirt supplier is mostly recycled cotton and things like that. So there's also a sustainability element that we try to focus on as well.
When you come to rewarding the people who enter your events, you say about the party, obviously you've got the medals and stuff like that. What role does that tend to play within the event? What made you go with these options to reward them as opposed to maybe just like a certificate or something? Or how do you position that?
Uh, in terms of like the medal, I don't think I really ever considered not doing it, but it was we at one point we really decided to amp up the physical element of our event because so much of our event is delivered remotely. So there is
Yeah.
the in-person elements at the start and the end, but we have, our tracking app, and for a large part of the event, the participants are on their own. So what we wanted to do was make sure the physical elements were as high quality as they could be. So, if you had a paper certificate versus the really nice medals that we have at the moment,
Thank you.
yeah, it's that sort of thing where for some people, the physical elements, it's a really big part of perception. So
Yeah,
we give our entrants these mystery race packs at the start, which they're in our like signature red envelopes, and they rip them open, and we put a lot of work into the race challenge pack. So
huh,
we have a lot of custom art designed. The one in Japan is actually like partially a comic book that we've had an artist work the story of the event into manga comics.
that's cool.
Whereas on our very first event, the challenge pack was just your bog standard envelope with a printout from my home computer whilst we were trying to figure out what this event was going to be. So yeah, making sure that the physical stuff is of a really good quality to try and match the quality of the service we provide. That's a big important thing for us.